All right. All right, so my first big question is, can each of you share one of the biggest takeaways you have from watching the show today?
You know, for me, my background is not design. I'm a business strategy, numbers, metrics guy. And one of the things that was great about that was just the inspiration that it was. And I think it just shows how much opportunity is out there. When you think about organizations that want to get ahead and they want to win, they want to compete, you've got to find people that can bring those ideas and can bring them to life. I mean, there's so many great ideas out there that don't have the opportunity to get the adoption, to get the opportunity to sort of live and thrive in the marketplace. It's because you have to have the combination of either a designer having the idea and bringing it to the table, or a designer working with somebody else that has the idea to be able to make it real. And so when I just think about what I just watched and think about all the people in this room, if you guys don't wake up each morning and say, oh my gosh, I could totally change the game for myself, for my company, for people I care about, for my family, whatever it is, you have that in front of you. And quite frankly, it's a skill set I wish I had, is to be able to take that design element and connect it with strategy and sort of go alone for a bit and then connect people together to go further together. But I don't, right? I have to rely on other people, which is sometimes hard, but it's folks in this audience that can make that difference, and it's really inspiring. So for me, it was just how much opportunity is out there for everybody in here and how much, quite frankly, business needs help from designers to make it real and to make it better for everybody.
One of the things that really stuck with me was that idea of, and you saw it in the Lyft example and you saw it in the Pinterest example, especially that idea of how design gravitates towards areas of scarcity. Places where there's plenty, places where there's scarcity. How can we change that balance? So if there's a surplus of empty car seats on the road, how do we design a solution that makes use of those when there's a scarcity of friendly rides? But I think one of the other things that stuck is that when we talk about things like finding a ride with somebody I trust, making that whole process feel familiar, I like to think of the things that we design, things like trust, familiarity, comfort, actually being our end product. I think that helps us attack bigger problems. And I think if we think we're not in the business of well-being or even healthcare, all of us, we're wrong, because there's a lot of opportunity to create comfort and trust.
When I watched the film, it reinforced some stuff that Jay Shu and I have been talking about over the last few months. As I moved into this role of UX strategy, we've been reading a lot of the work of Tina Seelig from the Stanford Design School, and she talks about the invention cycle, and we use words like creativity, imagination, innovation, almost interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable. In the film, it really stressed how you have to use your imagination, you have to dream something up, and then once you dream it up, it's just an idea, right? Then you go through this creative cycle where you're creating something, and then at a certain point, you need to release that thing into the world, and you get some feedback. They talked about the feedback loop. And there were points where they were talking about disruption, and what is happening is people are innovating in that space, but it's not enough to have an idea, imagine something, then create something, release it into the world. You actually need to make money with it, which is entrepreneurship. So the four things that Tina Seelig talks about is imagination, creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship. And to me, the film just reinforced kind of the need that, you know, design is in front of business. It is disrupting the world because it's being used that way. And to me, it just reinforced all of those things.
So, Steve, tell me a little bit about what you think the biggest challenges that companies face around innovation and strategy.
Well, I think the first place to start, and you see this quite frankly in a lot of conversations I have, is around alignment. I mean, you've got an amazing set of executives and people at all different levels in the organizations that have these great ideas, and they never really have simple ways, at least we see them, they often don't have simple ways, to vote or rank or have a place to interact and talk about how to align against that common vision, common goal. So I'd say the first thing is just the alignment to strategy seems like a place that's just ripe for design and innovation, I would say, is a first place to start. And then around just the strategy itself, the commitment across the organization to pick that strategy, recognize they should time box the commitment against that strategy and figure out how to innovate and change and tweak that as it makes sense. But I think the first thing, of course, is to get that alignment, and then they've got to follow up with a commitment of how to go after it, and recognize that after a certain quantity of time, there should be this cycle to reinvent and re-envision and make adjustments to make sure they're on the right path.
Perfect. Thank you. So, Meghan, tell me a little bit about Capital One and how you guys uniquely approach design and innovation. I think a lot of people here are dying to hear that.
Well, I'm not sure I've been there long enough to be able to say how unique we are necessarily, but I will say that compared to other places that I have been, the depth of commitment to design thinking is really extraordinary and in some ways frightening. We just totally reorged our business around customer experiences. So old divisions, things like marketing and analytics are no more. Instead, we have divisions called Match the Customer with the Car, Fund My Deal, and people are organized around these customer experiences. What that means then is because we deliver on so many different customer experiences, and that was a design-driven decision, the demand for design has just exploded within the past 60 days or so since the reorg. So that to me is truly extraordinary. I've never seen any other company really put their money where their mouth is and be willing to really take a risk and redesign their organization entirely around the customer. So it feels great to design. We're in the middle of a grand experiment, but it's also great that business leadership has confidence in customer centrism and the design organization to such a degree that we're just running with it and driving it.
Perfect. Thanks. Brian, similar question. You took on a new role recently and just want to be curious around what's new and how is that affecting what you're doing as far as design?
So in my new role, I'm really way in front of the process. So I have a seat at the table where we're actually coming up with these new ideas. And it's really prior to any funding happening. So we just really try to do some of these design thinking exercises to really fall in love with the problem rather than do a bunch of solutioning and usability work. We're really trying to get a good understanding of who our customer is, what we want to do, and really frame the problem that we want to solve. And then we can put all of our efforts behind solutioning it. So it's really up front, well before funding, and I got to tell you, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question for you, Brian. I know you're really passionate, and it is really exemplified in all the things you do for our community in the design world around Big D Design Conference, which is coming up here shortly. Tell me a little bit about why that's important to you and how driving learning and gathering this community is so critical.
Jay, you want to take this? I'm being serious.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
I'm outsourcing this to Jay Shu, my large ego.
All right. So I didn't really want to go to the Big D conference. Before I understood what it was, I really thought it was about people pushing pixels around, right? And as an Adobe community professional, I didn't want to go watch somebody push pixels and talk about grids and all that other stuff. I said, I have enough of that in my background. And then I discovered that the conference was about problem solving. I mean, when you had a Jim Henson talk about how Jim Henson designed a submarine to do the shot where Kermit is playing the Under the Rainbow, and you realize he could have died in the submarine, and he was that committed to giving that experience to filmmakers. It was that problem-solving process that intrigued me. And what's so incredible about this particular conference is Brian is always innovating and is always taking risks with the content and the speakers that he's bringing right here to the Dallas area so that our community can grow and learn from some of the very best minds in the industry, that we can then take those lessons of innovation and problem solving back to our companies and try to apply them in practical and pragmatic ways. And that, to me, is the difference that Big D brings to the table.
Well said. Woohoo!
So I'll piggyback off of it for a little bit. No, you reminded me of something. One of the things that it's said in the film too, and it's we're better together. I'm always saying we're better together. We're better with diversity. And we've had our challenges with that in the past. But I want to let you guys in the audience know a couple of secrets about the conference that people aren't aware of. So here's a secret that you can tell all of your friends tomorrow, okay? We have life drawing at the conference. So there will be a nude person that goes into one of the workshops, and you will get the opportunity to actually do life drawing, and one of the artists that will be teaching the class, in the past we've had a Pixar artist actually teach the class, or somebody from Disney teach the class.
And that's this year.
And that's this year. How's that? That's a pretty cool secret to tell your friends.
Conference that has life drawing.
Right, and another thing that we're doing this year is there's a yoga class where it's about team building, and it's how do you co-create using yoga. We saw a little bit, a demo of it last week, and you have a spotter, you have a person that is helping the acrobat is what they call it, and one person almost takes on the role of the engineer, the other is the designer, the other is the project manager. This is a killer class. I already know it is. People don't quite get it, but I'm going to tell you right now, that class will sell out. There's only 15 seats, and that's an amazing class taught by two wonderful yoga instructors here. And so we're always trying to innovate the content with the conference. So I just like to learn, and that's kind of why I do the conference. Back to Jay.
Brian puts his money where his mouth is, because Adam Polanski had an idea about taking a bus around town. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, Adam came to me with this idea of doing architecture, doing an architecture tour with the conference. So I, of course, said, how much is it going to cost? And then he told me, and I go, that's it? Yeah, let's do that. That's cool. And so we did it, filled the bus up. We went around to all these different spots, and it was Dan Klein is a teacher. He's from the Understanding Group. He's head of, what is it? Was he head of IAI? He had a fantastic time. So anyway, I think it's always about content. It's always about content.
Perfect. Thank you. You really spoke about innovation, and I want to open this question to all three of you guys. What do you think, if you were to guess, which industry is the most ripe and prime for disruption, and why?
Healthcare. I mean, I don't think there's another industry where the stakes are higher, and I mean for everybody, than healthcare, and the problems are so deep-seated and so thorny that, especially to someone who doesn't work in healthcare right now, it seems unapproachable in some ways, but we've got to start chipping away. And I think one of the things that I have a good friend who works in the population health space. So I think there's a lot of things that financial services can learn from areas like population health, and even vice versa, because the population financial health it may not be quite as deeply entrenched a problem as even population health. And there's a lot of opportunity for cross-pollination and a lot of learning between those kind of big, complex industries. And I wish we'd do a lot more co-design between us, actually.
I'll just add I think that's the right answer. I think healthcare is the most obvious and the most diverse and biggest opportunity. What I would say is that the broader answer is probably all of them. I mean, there's nothing right now, and if you think about design, that is the most amazing it's ever going to be, right? That's kind of the whole point, is over time it gets better. So I'd first say it's probably all of them. The most obvious and probably one that has the most gigantic leaps that could make forward in the next 5 or 10 years is probably healthcare. But I would say when you think about doing this disruption, you think about industries where these places can play, one of the things that I've seen historically is sometimes you have design organizations that bring to bear potential solutions to problems that don't really exist yet, or don't necessarily understand how to connect the design suggestions to a business case that's out there. So my advice in that space is when you think about this and you leave here, if you want to go be creative or push ideas within your own organizations or in your own sort of extracurricular work, is make sure that you're connecting this with a problem that's significant. Make sure you've got a thematic approach to what that is and why it's a problem and where your element may solve it. And don't be afraid to partner with somebody if you don't know how, that understands how to connect your solution in design with the financials to bring it to someone that can help you bring it to life. Because great design with no business case is sometimes left on the design floor, which is of course a problem. And great business case with no design gets limited adoption and excitement from internal stakeholders. They've got to be set together, and make sure that if you don't have both skill sets, you go out and find them to make your project successful.
I would say it is healthcare and all of the different industries that are supporting it, such as fitness, food industry. I think that those are our biggest problems, I think, facing us for the next 5 to 10 years. And it's just ripe for disruption across the board. Jay's still hounding me to get a Fitbit, and one of these days I will, but I think that there's so much there because we are all trying to, be healthier or want to be healthier, and there are consequences with it. And so it's ripe for disruption.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Now we're going to open it up for questions from you guys. So be thinking about questions you might have, who they're directed to, and what you want to ask.
So this might be the most sexy question. You talked about you talked about feedback, right? So outside of design, when you design something and then it goes into development and it goes into test and deploy and then it goes out to the marketplace, could you talk about, because most of you are or I think maybe all of you are in a large enterprise, how exactly that process works? Because I still see a lot of enterprises that are still completely what we'll call waterfall, and then people go into agile and getting into automation and those things. So how when you're trying to innovate and design these things, how do you get them back in a way that you can still innovate and beat small competitors and get that and still be ahead of the marketplace?
So what I can talk for what we do at my company. One of the things that we do is we do have some usability labs. We have dedicated user researchers. So as a product goes through the entire software development lifecycle, we have touch points with design, with technology, and with product, and with our customers all the way through the early stages of just getting the idea well framed to going through a cycle where we're doing design studios and very rapid types of prototyping, validating with customers very quickly. Once it goes over and we have a good design direction, it goes into coding. We have touch points with customers throughout the coding process. When it's prior to being released, we have our readiness reviews, we have usability testing, and then after it's released, we have analytics and surveys and questionnaires all throughout the process. We run a full service, end-to-end user research and usability practice with analytics on, I'll just say most of our products. We're still trying to figure it out on some, to be honest. But we do have that full-scale commitment with dedicated researchers, dedicated analysts, dedicated designers on our core products. That's kind of how we're handling the feedback loop with our customers in a large enterprise.
Yeah, just real quick, and another thing I think obviously needs a lot of UX is just government bureaucracy and things like the DMV and stuff. And how can we as like UXers make influence there without actually getting into politics, which I doubt any of us actually like want to do. But there's just a crying need for that stuff to really level up because it's in the Stone Age.
So that actually is already happening. So we do have, I almost went, Meghan, with fake news. When you know, what is something that we could do instead of healthcare? I almost went with fake news.
Yeah, that might be bigger.
Yeah, people are working on that right now. But when healthcare.gov rolled out, it was a huge user experience issue, gigantic, right? The Florida ballot, that's a user experience issue. There is actually now a center that is ran by two UX designers, Whitney Quisenberry and Dana Chisnell, and it's about getting the ballot right in all 50 states. They've got funding for it. They've built these field guides. There's no universal ballot because in the Constitution, the states have to create their own ballots. So what they've done is they've created these field guides to teach people really good design for ballots, and then they have these workshops and classes that they teach online, and the states can present their ballots and actually have a heuristic done on them by Whitney or Dana. So designers are working on the issue. When healthcare.gov was rolled out, there were two user researchers in DC that got pretty ticked off, and they started working on it, and it has over time improved. It's, I think, kind of what you were saying earlier, you know, there is a problem area and we just need to address it. And politics is a big one, Rob, but it is being addressed. There are certain designers that take up, such as the group from the Center for Civic Design, I think is what it, and they have the big ballot initiative. They are working on it now. It's just kind of getting plugged in to those different groups.
So I'm not in user experience and design, but when I think about opportunities for improvement, I think about someone who's working in a brick and mortar store that's the cashier that has an idea that's facing that problem absolutely every single day, and myself included, you know, our marketing will push something out and I'm like, seriously though, that's what we're working with? And you know, I have these ideas, but I don't really have a filter to take that. And so Sabre and Capital One may have those channels for here's your idea, whether it's submitted or otherwise, and I don't actually know if that exists. But what is the way to be able to be taken seriously with an idea if you're not in design, and filter that up to the top in the organization?
I'll start with that one. So I think it kind of goes back to you know, I think you gave an example of a clerk at checkout or whatever the case may be. It's that combination of, to get attention, you've got to be able to say, look, here's the very crisp problem, and you've got to figure it out in one or two sentences, right? And then the result of that problem creates this problem for your organization, whether it's brand, whether it's competition, whether it's too high a cost or missed revenue opportunities. So you've got a situation that creates this behavior that's not good for your organization. And you want to come with, I've got a couple of ideas that I think could change that, and here's what I believe is a positive impact. I think there's no CEO, you know, in the country that if they had somebody fill out on a regular basis, I saw this problem, it creates this issue for our firm, here's my solution, here's what I'll get if I fix it. If you have that crisply ready to go, and you can figure out whether it's, you know, searching a company directory or going online and finding out who's out there or checking LinkedIn and get those things in front of people, if it's crisp, people will read it. If it's got a business case behind it, people might respond. And if they read and respond, you might be in a pretty interesting meeting pretty soon, right? So think about that. Everyone wants that. And every CEO would say, I want more of it. Just give me those great ideas with business cases behind it that are meaningful and I can react to quickly.
Do you use the elegant words that a business team wants to hear? Do you use the short, fast, when you said being concise? You know, there's the fancy words that I feel like can attract business, and then there's the real words.
Definitely real words. I mean, There's definitely this quote, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter. You guys may know that one. That's the criticality, is to be as concise as possible. And, it's one of those things, doesn't sound pretty silly, but sort of talk to CEOs like they're maybe 4th or 5th graders. Yeah. It's the best way to do it, right? You're going to get about 17 seconds. You want to grab attention, and they want to see that thing quickly. And if you can grab that attention, you're in business.
So your opportunity statement or problem statement, frame it as who, what, wow. I am a cashier. Here is the problem that I'm having. Here's my idea. Who, what, wow. And then I want you to film it in 1 minute. So do your who, what, wow statement in 1 minute. That's your elevator pitch, and email that to someone. See what happens. Go ahead.
Okay, for someone who's worked in design in the past and also customer experience, but not in UX design, and they're, let's say it's a friend of yours and they're halfway through their UX design certificate, they don't have the portfolio out online yet, what would be the next best step for them to start working at a company in UX design?
That should be an easy question to answer, but I don't feel like it is necessarily. You have an answer?
So you're saying you don't have a portfolio, but you're interested in getting into UX? I would say find a good website that you think needs some overhaul, first and foremost, and then approach it as if it were your own project and you were hired by the company you want to work for, and tackle it the way you think that customer needs to be fixing the problem. Look at what are the challenges they have, who are their customers, how are they approaching the problems that they're approaching digitally, and then present that in a format that you can then share with the person you're trying to get hired by.
So in our SMU program that Jay, Preston, and I teach, we have structured it in such a way that we're teaching user research, user experience design, and usability. And a lot what Tracey is saying, pick something, do some user research, build up that portion of your portfolio, build up your user experience design. So have some sketches, have a prototype, an actual prototype. You could use InVision or any prototyping tool. Do some usability testing with it. Refine that prototype. Then you have a really nice case study with user research, with design, with usability, and you can craft a really nice story. We've had a lot of success walking our students in 16 weeks through the program where they do have that nice case study, and again, structured with, user research, user experience design, usability. So that's step number 1, is you've got to do that. Step number 2, Jay Shu always says what? What are your 3 words that you say 3 times?
Oh, practice, research, network.
And Jay, wouldn't it be nice if there was a place they could do that? Here in just a few weeks.
I'm trying to think, Brian. Wouldn't that be great if there was like a conference?
Right.
Like on the 14th, 15th, and 16th in Addison?
Yeah. No, anyway, from networking purposes, being here tonight is a really important thing. Joining whatever user group you want to join, going out to those on a regular basis, connecting with people, talking with recruiters, talent agents, things like that, network. In all seriousness, if you don't want to go to Big Design, that's fine. Big mistake. However, there are other conferences that are local that you could go to. Rocks Digital, you could go to Front Porch. Those are opportunities to network with hiring managers. And we tell our students, network all the time. That's the best way to get a job, is word of mouth. Network.
I'll add to that, too, is that whether you're a designer or a UXer or an information architect or a researcher, you tend to get hired for what you know and you show, right? So they are going to dig deep into what do you know, what is your experience, and then what can you show me that you've gotten results from, right? Because companies are really wanting results. And when they hire people, they're saying, is this a person that can help me get the results I need? And that's your interview, right? If the answer is yes, you'll get hired.
And from a hiring manager perspective, the last advice I'll give you, when you present yourself, and I always use the acronym SELF, it's about skills, experience, likability, and fit. Okay, do you have the skills to do the job? You probably do because they're interviewing you. Do you have the experience? There's something in your background that they find interesting. Do they like you? Okay, that's important. If you're a likable person, great. But do you fit with the team? That's a question mark, right? So you may not get the job because of fit. You could have the skills, the experience, and they could like you, but there's maybe some jerk on the team. They just know that it's flame and oil, so self, always think of self, skills, experience, likability, and fit.
So if you want to learn more about it, it's 18F.
I'm going to jump in and answer that question by trying to combine 3 random things into one, which will be fun to watch. But there was a question about, I've got a great idea, how do I get it in front of somebody who cares? There's a question about, I've got a friend that wants to get into UX, how do they do that? And there's a question about, why is government so terrible from a design perspective, right? There's an answer here where all 3 connect, right? Is the person that wants to get into design could look at the DMV website, and they could take their 1-minute video, and they can submit it to the mayor or whoever is the person that, the Department of Transportation, whatever the case is in that space, right? So if you look at something like that, one of the things that's so amazing about business and design and those 2 things being tied together is they're the most powerful when they're really friendly with each other. And what you've got right here is you've got a good example of people saying, like, I want to take action and do something, people quoting folks that have interest in getting into design, and people talking about problems that are real and people agree they're real. So you've got clear opportunities just in this 20-minute conversation where you can put those 3 things together and try to make an impact. It's right in front of you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I don't have any other questions, and we're at time. So thank you guys for coming so much. It was such a pleasure to have you guys here. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful evening. Be safe, and see you at Big Design.